The kitchen is on fire, and Amara Johnson is dancing in the middle of it. 6 pans going at once, orders flying. The little restaurant packed wall to wall and roaring, and she moves through the heat like she was born in it, spinning, tasting, laughing, calling out over the din. Table 4, where's my jollof? Let's go, let's go. Steam rises. Oil sings. A whole room of strangers leans toward the pass, waiting because tonight, like every night, the girl behind the counter is about to hand them something they will talk about for a week. This is Amara's place. 25 years old, Nigerian-American, and the most talked about young chef in the city, all because of one thing nobody had ever tasted before, her mother's Lagos recipes reborn through Korean fire. Jollof rice folded through kimchi. Bulgogi kissed with West African spice. A video of her plating it had gone off like a bomb online, 12 million views, a line around the block, magazines calling her the future of food. And she had built every bit of it herself, from nothing, from grief and stubbornness and a wooden spoon. Because her mother had crossed an ocean from Lagos with 2 suitcases and that spoon and a dream, and she had raised Amara over a stove, and then she had died and left her daughter 2 things, a little brother to look after, and a chipped blue bowl. Amara had taken her grief and done the only thing she knew how to do with pain. She cooked it into something the whole world wanted a taste of. And it worked. For a while, it really, truly worked. When the last table finally clears near midnight, her phone lights up, and it is Daniel, her little brother, 17 and grinning 3 time zones away.
Amara.
I got in. Full acceptance. Look, I'm sending the letter right now. She has to grip the counter. Of course you got in, she says, fierce and bright. I never doubted you, for 1 second. Tuition's kind of insane though, he says, quieter. Maybe I could work a year first, help you. Absolutely not. You listen to me, Daniel Johnson. You're going to that school. I handle the money, that's my job. Your job is to be brilliant. Understood? A pause, then soft. Understood. Love you, sis. Love you more. Now go celebrate. She hangs up, looks around her warm, empty, beautiful restaurant, and for a moment, everything is exactly right. Now before I go on, if you love a story about a strong woman and the cold, powerful man who is about to lose his whole heart to her, do me a favor right now. Tap subscribe, hit that like button, and tell me down in the comments where you are watching from, because I read every single one. Trust me, you're going to want to be here when these 2 collide. Now let me tell you about the night he walked in. It is an ordinary Tuesday when the black car pulls up outside. Amara does not see it. She is at the pass, elbow deep in dinner service. But the room feels it. A hush moves through the restaurant like a draft under a door, and heads turn, and even Amara's regulars go quiet, because the man who walks in does not look like anyone. He looks like weather. Tall, still, expensive, with dark eyes that take the whole room in one pass, and a few sharp-suited men who arrange themselves around him without being told. Every person in that restaurant lowers their voice by half without knowing why. Every person except Amara. Because Amara does not know who Kang Min-joon is. She does not know he is one of the youngest billionaires in the country, that he owns half the skyline. She certainly does not know the other thing, the quiet thing whispered in certain rooms, that behind the hotels and the shipping lines he is the head of the oldest, most feared crime family in Korea, a man they call the Beast. She does not know any of that. She just sees a table of hungry men, and she is food to send out. His friend had dragged him here, swearing this tiny place was worth it. Min-joon expected to be bored. He is always bored. Nothing has tasted like anything to him in months. He sits with his back to the wall out of pure habit, and he waits to be unimpressed, the way powerful men are unimpressed by everything, as a kind of armor. Amara brings the plate out herself, because she is passing anyway. Jollof kimchi fried rice, deep red and smoky, crowned with bulgogi still hissing off the grill. She does not fuss over his suit or the cold in his eyes or the danger sitting quietly at his table. She just sets it down, grins, and says, "Eat it while it's hot or don't blame me." And she is 3 tables away before he can say a word. Min-joon looks at the plate the way he looks at everything, like it owes him something. Then he takes one bite. and the man who feels nothing goes completely still. Warmth floods across his tongue, spice and smoke and sweetness, and underneath it something impossible, something that tastes like being a small boy in a warm kitchen, safe, before the world got heavy. His fork stops in the air. His friend is talking, and he does not hear one word. He watches the woman move through her own restaurant like she owns the whole world with one hand on a pan, and something in his chest that he was certain had died turns over in its sleep. On his way out, he stops at the door. Amara glances up, surprised to find those still dark eyes fixed on her. "You," he says quietly. "I'll be back for that." She laughs, already turning toward the next table. "We're open till 11, handsome." And she forgets him before the door even swings shut. She has no idea she has just fed the one meal that will follow a dangerous man through every sleepless night to come. She has no idea he will never stop chasing the taste of her hands. He does not come back. And a few weeks later, Amara's whole world falls apart, quietly on paper, without a single raised voice. His name is Han Sung-ho, and he arrives with a checkbook and a smile that never reaches his eyes. He calls himself an investor. He wants to buy in, to franchise her, to make her a household name across the country. Amara, cautious, says she will think about it. That is her mistake. Because when she finally says no, Sung-ho does not simply walk away. He goes quiet and he goes to work. He buys the building out from over her head. He buys her supplier contracts. He buys the loan she signed with shaking hands and calls it in, all of it, at once. And when the dust settles on the fine print, he owns the rights to the very recipes she bled to create, her mother's jollof, reborn, signed away in a clause she never should have trusted. It is all perfectly legal. It is quiet and clean, and it takes everything.
On the last night, Amara stands alone in the middle of her restaurant, and it is empty. The chairs are up on the tables, the golden light is off, and in her hands she holds the one thing they could not take, her mother's chipped blue bowl. She presses it to her chest, and she does not cry because Johnson women do not cry where anyone can see. But her hands are shaking, and across the ocean there is a boy with an acceptance letter and a tuition bill, counting on a sister who has just lost everything. So she lifts her chin, because forward is the only direction she has ever known how to face. Now, let me take you across the city, to a house the size of a museum, and the man who cannot eat. Because Kang Min-joon is not well, and the reason has nothing to do with money, which he has more of than God. 3 months ago, the one person who ever loved him died. His grandfather, the old man who raised him, who built the whole empire with his bare hands, who is the only soul on earth who ever looked at Min-joon and saw the boy instead of the beast. He is gone. And the day they buried him, something in Min-joon went silent and never spoke again. He stopped sleeping. Night after night, he sits awake in that enormous, immaculate house, surrounded by everything a man could want and nothing he needs. And he stopped eating. Food turns to ash on his tongue. The finest chefs in the country are summoned to his kitchen and dismissed one by one, and nothing reaches him. He sits at the head of a banquet table long enough for 20 and pushes away plate after untouched plate, a young king starving in a palace, mourning the only person who ever brought him warmth. It is his grandmother who saves him, though no one knows it yet. Grandmother Kang is small and straight-backed and far clever than anyone gives her credit for, and she has buried a husband and watched her grandson turn to stone, and she has decided she is not going to bury him too. Late one night, she finds a video on her phone, a young woman cooking with her whole heart, and she watches Min-joon's face as he eats nothing, and she remembers something. "That girl," she says, "the one from the restaurant you would not stop talking about. Find her, bring her here. If anything can wake you, it is that." And because he can refuse his grandmother nothing, and because some part of him has been chasing that taste for weeks, Min-joon says yes. The offer reaches Amara 2 days later, through a discreet agency in a plain envelope, and it is so absurd she almost laughs out loud. A private client, unnamed, seeks a personal chef for a 6-month exclusive contract at a private estate outside the city. Then she sees the salary and she sits down. It is enough to erase every debt she carries. It is enough to pay Daniel's tuition 4 times over. It is enough to start her whole life again. The agency woman folds her hands. The client values his privacy above everything. You would live on the estate, cook for him and his household, and there is one condition that is not open to discussion, which is, you never ask his name, his business, or his affairs. You cook, nothing more. A rich, paranoid recluse who wants to eat in peace. Amara has cooked for stranger, and she is far too broke to be proud. But she surprises herself, sliding condition right back across the table. Then I have one too. I don't want to know who he is either. Not his name, not his face in the papers, none of it. If I'm vanishing into some billionaire's kitchen for 6 months, I'd rather he stay a stranger. Cleaner that way. The agency woman almost smiles. I think, she says, that can be arranged. So Amara signs. She has no idea she has just signed her way straight back to the man she fed on an ordinary Tuesday, the one who said he would be back. She has no idea her new employer has spent every sleepless night since chasing the memory of her cooking. She only knows the number on the page and the boy it will save. She packs 1 suitcase and her mother's blue bowl, and she goes. The estate sits an hour past the last streetlight, up a private road behind 2 sets of iron gates. It is beautiful and cold, all glass and gray stone, and hush, the kind of house that seems to be holding its breath. Men in dark suits watch her from the edges of rooms and never quite meet her eye, and they treat the unseen master of the house with a deference that borders on fear. Amara lifts her chin and decides not to care. She has cooked her way through colder rooms than this. On her first morning, before the sun is fully up, she goes hunting for the kitchen, and she finds it a vast cathedral of steel and stone with windows onto the gray garden. And she is not alone. A man stands at the counter with his back to her, tall, broad through the shoulders, fresh from some workout, a sheen of sweat on skin marked by the most extraordinary tattoo she has ever seen, a dragon that coils up his spine and over one shoulder toward his throat. He is shirtless, pouring himself a glass of water, and he has not heard her come in. Amara, who has spent her whole life around line cooks and gym rats and men who mistake a bare chest for personality, is entirely unbothered. She assumes he is a trainer or one of the endless bodyguards. She sets down her things and says briskly to his back, "Excuse me, could you tell your boss breakfast will be ready in 20 minutes? The man goes very still. Then he turns slowly and Amara gets the full force of a face that could stop traffic, a sharp jaw, dark, unreadable eyes, and the faint, dangerous beginning of amusement. He looks at her for a long moment, and something flickers behind his eyes that she cannot read, something almost like disbelief, as though he has just seen a ghost walk into his kitchen. "I'll let him know," Kang Min-joon says, "and nothing else, because he knows exactly who she is." He knew the instant she spoke. The girl from the restaurant. The hands behind the only meal that has reached him in months, delivered to his own kitchen by a grandmother far cleverer than she lets on. He should tell her. He does not. He lets her believe he is the help, and he walks out of that kitchen wearing the first thing close to a smile his men have seen in a very long time. He wants to know what she is like when she does not know she is standing in front of the beast. For 3 days he says nothing. For 3 days, Amara runs his kitchen like a general and treats him like furniture. She shoos the mysterious, shirtless man off her clean counters. She tells him he is standing in her light. When he lingers, watching her cook with those still dark eyes, she points a wooden spoon at him. "Don't you have someone to guard? Your boss must be a real piece of work, hiding up there. 6 months, and I'll bet I never even see his face." And Min-joon, leaning in the doorway of his own house, says quietly, "You'd be surprised." On the 4th morning, she serves him without thinking of it as anything at all. Spicy jollof kimchi fried rice, grilled bulgogi glistening, peppered prawns curled pink and hot, a pot of ginger tea steaming beside it. She slides the plate across the counter to the man she thinks is a bodyguard, because he is there and because he always looks a little like he has forgotten what food is for. Here, you look like you haven't eaten in a year. Eat. Min-joon looks down at the plate, and there it is again, the red rice, the smoke, the ghost he has chased through every sleepless night since they buried his grandfather. His throat tightens in a way that has nothing to do with hunger. He picks up the fork. He takes one bite, and then another. And then he does the thing he has not done since the funeral, the thing his own household has begun to fear he never will again. He finishes the entire plate. Silence fills the kitchen. Amara, wiping down the counter, glances over and blinks because the untouchable stranger has cleared his plate to the last grain and is sitting back in his chair looking almost undone. She has fed enough grieving people in her life to know what she is looking at. She simply does not understand it yet. Min-joon sets down his fork. He looks up at her, directly, and the faintest smile touches the corner of his mouth. I ate the food, he says. Amara raises an eyebrow, waiting. Now, he says, low and certain, his eyes never leaving hers. I crave the cook. The room freezes. 2 bodyguards by the door go rigid, eyes wide, because no one speaks like that in this house, and no one has heard that tone from their master in years. But Amara does not know he is their master. So Amara simply rolls her eyes, tosses the dishcloth over her shoulder, and says, Too bad. I'm not on the menu. A choking sound comes from the doorway. One of the guards has turned purple, trying not to laugh. The other has developed a sudden, deep interest in the floor. For the first time in living memory, someone has looked the beast dead in the eye and turned him down flat, and she does not even know what she has done. Min-joon stares at her, and then, God help his men, the corner of his mouth lifts and Kang Min-joon almost laughs. He rises, sets his plate in the sink like a man raised with manners, and pauses at the door. We'll see, he says, and he is gone. Amara shakes her head at the empty doorway. Cocky bodyguards, she mutters, and goes back to her prep. She has absolutely no idea. That night, in the guards' quarters, the story spreads like fire. Song, the big one from the door, tells it 3 times, acting out the dishcloth over the shoulder, the nod on the menu, the master's face, and grown men who are paid to be frightening laugh until they cannot breathe. She doesn't know. One of them keeps wheezing. She still doesn't know who he is. And upstairs, alone in his enormous dark house, Kang Min-joon lies awake as always. Except tonight, he is not staring at the ceiling grieving. Tonight, he is almost smiling at it, one hand resting on his own chest, over the place where, for the first time since the funeral, something is unmistakably, terrifyingly alive. And so begins the slowest, strangest, most stubborn courtship of Kang Min-joon's life, waged entirely across a kitchen counter by a woman who is convinced she is fending off hired muscle. Because after that morning, the man is always there. Breakfast, then lunch, then late at night when Amara is alone with a pot of something and the radio low. He never says much. He watches her hands. He watches her face when she tastes and adjusts and hums to herself. And slowly, without meaning to, Amara starts talking to him, because he listens the way stone listens, and there is something restful in that. She tells him about Daniel, the acceptance letter, her mother and the wooden spoon and the ocean. She does not tell him about the restaurant, about Sung-ho, about the recipes stolen out from under her, because that wound is still too raw to hand a stranger. He tries once to give her something. A jeweler's box appears beside her cutting board one morning, and inside it a bracelet that costs more than her restaurant ever earned in a year. Amara looks at it, then at him in the doorway. No, she says, and slides it back. But I know what it is. It's a very expensive way of telling me you think I can be bought. I can't. Tell your boss to save his money. She never once imagines the box came from him. Min-joon takes the bracelet back and cannot decide whether he is insulted or falling. She argues with him. When he tells her, flatly, that she works too hard and should let the staff handle the late meals, she plants a hand on her hip. Oh, should I? And who taught you how a kitchen runs? Sit down and eat your soup before I take it back. And the beast whom men cross the city to avoid sits down and eats his soup. She feeds his guards. She learns that Song has a sweet tooth he is deeply ashamed of, and starts leaving little folded parcels of leftovers by the coat closet, pretending not to notice him eat them. She learns the driver's birthday and bakes him something, and the man nearly weeps because no one in this house has ever done such a thing. Warmth spreads through the cold estate like heat through cold oil, quietly outward from the kitchen. And at the center of it, watching, is a man who had forgotten warmth was something a person could survive. The change in Min-joon does not go unnoticed. For the first time in months, the master of the house sleeps, for hours, then 5, because a bowl of warm soup has begun appearing outside his study at exactly the hour his grief usually wakes him. He never catches her. She always slips away before he can open the door, so he can never thank her, so it can never become a thing she did for the beast. He starts to live for the sound of her humming down the hall. One night, he cannot sleep at all, and he comes down to find her at the counter at 2 in the morning, stirring something slow and fragrant, her eyes far away. He sits. She does not send him off. For a long while neither speaks. Then, into the dark, he says a thing he has never said aloud. The man who owns this house lost someone. A few months ago, the only person who ever, I think, actually liked him. Amara keeps stirring, gives him room. And, she says gently, and he doesn't know how to be a person without him. Min-joon says, everyone in his life wants something. His money, his name, his protection. That one old man was the only one who ever just wanted him. Now there's no one. Amara sets a bowl in front of him. Well, she says softly, eat your soup. Somebody made it just for you. No strings. And Kang Min-joon looks at this woman like she has reached into his chest and switched on a light in a room that has been dark his whole life. If your heart is starting to ache for this lonely, dangerous man who cannot stop finding excuses to sit in her kitchen, you are exactly where I want you to be. Do me a favor, smash that like button so more people find this story, and comment the word Crave if you already know these two are in serious trouble. Because it is about to get so much deeper. Stay with me. Some nights it is not heavy at all. Some nights she teaches him to cook, shoving a knife into his hands and standing behind him to guide them, laughing at how a man who runs an empire cannot dice an onion to save his life. You're holding it like a weapon, she scolds. It's a vegetable, not an enemy. Gentle. There. See. And Min-joon, standing very still with her arms around him from behind and her breath at his shoulder, thinks he could stop time right here and count it a life well spent. He burns the rice. She makes him eat it anyway. It is the best meal of his life. It is around then that Amara meets the old woman. Grandmother Kang appears in the kitchen one afternoon like she owns it, which Amara does not yet realize. She does, tiny and sharp-eyed, and she watches Amara work for a full 10 minutes without a word before she says he is eating again. The bodyguard, Amara says, and the old woman's eyes glitter with a private joke. The bodyguard. She tastes the stew straight from the pot, uninvited, and nods once, the way a queen knights a soldier. My family takes the warm ones, she says, and it freezes them one by one. I have watched it happen for 60 years. Until you. She sets down the spoon. Keep cooking, girl. You are doing something no amount of money in this country could buy. And she is gone before Amara can ask what on earth she means. His world stays carefully at the edges of her days, but it does not stay invisible forever. She begins to notice things. The way hard, expensive men arrive for hushed meetings and leave paler than they came. The way a room reorganizes itself around the stranger she thought was staff. The way even the head of the household security calls him, quietly, sir. One evening she is folding laundry, and a business magazine slides out from a stack. And there on the cover is a face she knows, her shirtless bodyguard, in a suit worth a car, under a headline calling him one of the most powerful and private men in the country. She stands there holding it, heart going strange, and she begins to understand that the man she has been feeding and scolding and, God help her, falling for is not staff at all. He is someone enormous and hidden and feared, and she has promised not to ask his name. She does not confront him. She is not ready for the answer. But something shifts in her, a wariness, a held breath, and Min-joon feels it, and it terrifies him because he can see the moment coming when she will make him choose between the truth and her, and he is not ready to lose either. Then the storm comes, and it decides things for both of them. A great howling spring storm rolls in off the sea, and near midnight the power dies across the whole estate. The entire glass house plunged into black and rain. Amara is feeling her way through the dark kitchen when a hand finds hers, warm and certain, and his voice says close by, "It's only the storm. Here." He lights candles, one after another, until the great, cold kitchen glows, and the two of them are marooned together in a little island of light with the rain roaring against the glass, and there is nowhere else in the world to be. And in the candlelight, at last, his guard comes all the way down. He tells her about the old man who raised him, the one who died. He tells her what it is to be feared by everyone and known by no one, to sit at the head of a table where every single person is afraid of you. "They see the legend," he says, low, staring into a candle. "The name, the power. Not one of them has ever just seen me, except an old man in the ground." And he lifts his eyes to her. "And a cook who has no idea who I am, and treats me like an idiot who can't hold a knife." Amara's breath catches. "Maybe she sees you fine," she says, barely above the rain. Maybe she sees a man who doesn't sleep and forgets to eat, and is a lot lonelier than he lets on. Maybe that's the whole person, and the rest is just noise. He reaches out and tucks a loose braid behind her ear, and his hand is not quite steady. "You," he says, "are the most dangerous thing that has ever happened to me." And Amara, who has spent 6 months telling herself she was only cooking, closes the last of the distance herself. The kiss is slow and stunned and total. 6 months of restraint dissolving in candlelight while the storm throws itself at the windows. And when they finally break apart, she presses her forehead to his and laughs shaky and says, "You're not just some bodyguard, are you?" "No," he breathes. "Are you going to tell me who you are?" A long silence, full of rain. "Soon," he says. "There's something I have to make right first. Give me until it's right. Please." And because she is happy and because she is in love and because she promised not to ask, Amara lets herself believe him. It is the last easy breath she takes for a long while. Because the truth is already coming for her, and it is so much worse than she has let herself imagine. What Amara does not know is that the man who destroyed her restaurant, Han Sung-ho with his checkbook and his cold smile, does not work for himself. He works for the Kang family. He works specifically for Min-joon's uncle, Kang Tae-suk, second in the empire and starving to be first, a man who buys up ruined businesses and strips them for parts and calls it strategy. The front company that gutted Amara's life is a Kang company. The empire she has been living inside for 6 months is the very same one that took everything she had, months before she ever walked through its gates. And Kang Tae-suk has just realized who the cook is. He has watched his grieving, softened nephew come back to life over a kitchen counter, and he has seen his chance. A distracted Min-joon, a lovesick Min-joon, is a Min-joon who can be pushed aside. So Tae-suk does not send men in the night, because this is not that kind of story. He does something colder. He gathers the paperwork, the contract, the stolen recipes, the Kang crest stamped over the ruin of Amara's life, and he makes sure, very gently, that she finds it. Because the fastest way to break his nephew is to make the one warm thing in his life walk out the door on her own. It works. Amara finds the folder in an office off the pantry while she is looking for a clean apron, and her own face is looking up at her from inside it. Her restaurant, her recipes, Han Sung-ho's signature, and above it all on the letterhead in cold black type, the crest she has been living beneath for 6 months. Kang. She stands there holding the proof that the house she felt safe in, the arm she fell asleep against, belonged to the very empire that gutted her life and signed her mother's dream away in fine print. And then she hears his voice behind her and she turns, and she is not looking at a bodyguard anymore. She is looking at Kang Min-joon, billionaire, head of the oldest family in the country, the beast, and the last piece drops into place with a sound like a door closing. Amara, explain this. Her voice does not sound like her own. She holds up the folder. Your name, your company, my mother's recipes. Was it you? No. God, no, I didn't know. I swear to you I did not know until. Until when? Before or after you let me think you were the help. Before or after the storm. You knew who I was. That first morning in this kitchen. You knew me, and you said nothing. His silence is the whole answer. She laughs, and it is a terrible sound. The restaurant, that ordinary Tuesday, that was you. You came to my table, and then you brought me here and you paid for me, like the building, like the recipes, like everything else your family buys. It was never a purchase. For the first time, the beast's voice cracks. The contract, the money, yes, I arranged it because I could not find you any other way, and I could not stop thinking about that meal, about you. But it stopped being that the first morning. Amara, it became the only real thing in my entire life. Don't. It's the truth. You don't get to say that to me, she says, and now her eyes are bright and furious. You let me fall for a lie in your kitchen while your family still had the knife in my back. Everything they took from me, it was you. It was always you. For a long moment, she just looks at him, and she watches the legend and the liar and the lonely man from the candlelight all collapse into one person she no longer knows how to hold. The worst part, she says, and her voice drops very low, and quiet is so much worse than shouting, is that I would have understood if you had told me that first morning, the storm, any of 100 nights you sat in my kitchen and let me talk. I would have been angry and I would have understood, because I know exactly what it is to have your whole life decided by men in rooms you're not allowed into. But you didn't trust me with the truth. You only trusted me to make you feel better. That is not love. That is one more powerful man taking something from me and calling it a gift. So Amara does the only thing left to her that is hers to do. She takes her mother's blue bowl and her one suitcase, and she walks out of the glass house into the gray morning. And this time no one closes a hand around her wrist to stop her. He lets her go, because he believes he has earned the losing of her. And Kang Tae-suk, watching from a window with a cup of tea, allows himself a small, satisfied smile, certain he has just won. I know your heart just cracked right down the middle, because so did mine. If you are feeling this, do not scroll away, because what he does next is the whole reason I wanted to tell you this story. Hit subscribe right now so you don't miss the ending, and comment yes or no. Should she forgive him? Then let me show you exactly how far a changed man will go. Not to trap the woman he loves, but to set her free and hope she chooses him anyway. Stay with me. For 3 days, Kang Min-joon does not eat. He does not sleep. He sits at the head of that too long table in the dark, and the whole cold house holds its breath around him. And everyone waits for the beast to do what the beast has always done, to burn something down. Kang Tae-suk waits for it most of all, because a nephew consumed by rage is a nephew who makes mistakes, a nephew who can be maneuvered out and replaced. But that is not what Min-joon does, because the old man who raised him taught him one last thing that his uncle never learned. The strongest thing a powerful man can do is not to take. It is to give something back. So Min-joon does not go to war. He goes to work quietly, methodically, and he takes his uncle's whole scheme apart in daylight. He calls in every favor and every ledger, and he lays Tae-suk's years of stripping and fraud out in front of the family and the board, clean and undeniable. And he does what no one in the Kang family has ever had the nerve to do. He forces his uncle out. No threats, no violence, just the cold, total, public end of Kang Tae-suk's ambitions, on paper in a boardroom, with everyone watching. And Han Sung-ho, the smiling man with the checkbook, finds every one of his contracts unwound and his reputation in ruins, undone by the same quiet, legal patience that once undid Amara, only this time aimed the other way. And then Min-joon does the thing that matters. He finds the contract that stole Amara's mother's recipes, and he does not lock it in a drawer as leverage, and he does not use it to lure her back. He signs every last right back into her name. All of it, free and clear. And he sends it to her with no conditions and no note asking for anything, because he finally understands that a thing you love is not a thing you keep. It is a thing you set free. But he does more than that, because his grandmother raises an eyebrow at him over her tea and says the truest thing anyone has said to him in months. You gave her back her recipes, and you think that settles it. You have not given her the only thing she ever actually wanted from you, foolish boy, which is the truth, all of it, to her face, and then the grace to let her choose. You have spent your life making people do what you want. Now stand in front of that woman with nothing and let her decide. So he goes to her, not with a car full of men, not with a checkbook, not with a folder. Just Min-joon alone, standing outside the small new place she has already stubbornly begun to rebuild, holding nothing at all. And when she opens the door and sees him and her jaw sets, he does not try to charm her. He simply, finally, tells her everything. Who he is, what his family is, what his uncle did and what he has now undone. That he knew who she was from the first morning and was too much of a coward to say it, because the moment he told her the truth, he was terrified she would look at him the way the whole world looks at him. Afraid. You returned my recipes, she says, guarded, arms crossed. You didn't have to come here for that. I didn't come here for that, he says. I came because you were right. I lied to the only person who ever saw me, and I don't want to be a man who does that. I'm not asking you to forgive me. I'm not asking you for anything. I just needed you to hear the truth from me, standing here with nothing, so that whatever you decide it knowing all of it. Amara looks at him for a long, long moment, this dangerous, gentle, hopelessly honest man standing empty-handed on her doorstep. 6 months you lied, she says. I know. You broke my heart in your own kitchen. I know that too. And now you dismantle an empire, embarrass your whole family, hand me back my mother's life's work, and show up here with nothing. Expecting what? Exactly. Nothing, he says. I told you. I'm done taking things from you. And that, in the end, is the thing that undoes her, not the empire, not the recipes, but a man who has finally learned to arrive with open hands. You're an idiot, Amara says, and her voice breaks on it. A rich, lonely, ridiculous idiot who still can't dice an onion. I know, he says, and something like hope breaks across his face. Come in, she says. Sit down. Stop being an idiot. Let me feed you. And the beast of soul walks into a tiny kitchen and sits down at her counter and lets himself at last be fed. She makes him earn the rest of it, slowly, in daylight, with the truth this time and all of it. She makes him tell her everything as he closes the dark doors of his family one by one, keeping the hotels and the honest work, dismantling the rest, becoming quietly a man his cook can be proud of instead of a legend his enemies fear. I'm not marrying a beast, she warns him. I'm marrying a man who tells me the truth, even when it costs him. Can you be that? I can learn, he says. Teach me. You seem to enjoy teaching me things I'm terrible at. And she laughs despite herself, and that laugh is the sound of a door opening instead of closing. And it is his grandmother, of course, who has the last word, because it turns out the sharp old woman engineered every bit of it. It was Grandmother Kang who saw a video of a girl cooking with her whole heart and thought, that is what my grandson has forgotten how to feel. It was she who insisted they find her, who set a grieving beast and a fearless cook in the same kitchen and simply waited. You stopped eating, child, she says when he confronts her. I have buried too much of my family to this coldness. I was not going to bury you to it too. So I found you someone who cooks like the world is still worth feeding. She pats Amara's hand. Marry her before she comes to her senses. 6 months later, the restaurant is open again on a better street with Amara's name over the door and her mother's chipped blue bowl on a shelf where the whole room can see it. Daniel is thriving at his school across the ocean, every cent paid, and he calls his sister every Sunday and demands to know why she sounds so happy. And on a quiet Tuesday night, after the last table has gone, A tall man with a dragon on his shoulder lets himself into her kitchen, the way he has every night since she took him back. He is not shirtless tonight, though Amara notes with a private smile that he is not above it when he wants something. He is just Min-joon, sleeves rolled up, the cold long gone out of his eyes, sitting at her counter the way he did on that very first morning, waiting to be fed by the one person on earth who was never once afraid of him. She slides a plate across the counter to him. Jollof kimchi fried rice, deep red and smoky, the dish that started all of it, her mother's blue bowl beside it holding the sauce. He takes a bite. He closes his eyes, and when he opens them, he looks up at her with everything he has, and he says the words one more time, soft now, a vow instead of a challenge. I ate the food. Amara leans across her own counter, close enough to kiss him, and finishes it for him. And now you crave the cook. Yeah, I heard you the first time, handsome. And this time, when she tells him he is not on the menu, it is a lie, and they both know it, and the most feared man in Seoul laughs out loud in a warm little kitchen at the end of the night, home at last. They marry in the spring, small, by the sea, at a house that has belonged to his family for 100 years and has never once held a day this happy. Grandmother Kong cries and insists it is the wind. Daniel flies in and gives a toast so proud and so teasing that Amara throws her napkin at him across the table. And when the party has gone quiet and the lanterns burn low, the bride and groom slip away, not to dance, but to the little kitchen at the back of the house, where she ties an apron over her wedding dress and he rolls up his sleeves, and together, laughing, the cook and the man who craved her make a midnight meal for two and eat it straight from her mother's chipped blue bowl, passing one spoon back and forth. Because some love stories are written in words. The best ones are written in flavor, and theirs will simmer, warm and true, for the rest of their lives. If this story wrecked you and put you back together the way it did me, you know exactly what to do. Hit that subscribe button so you never miss one of these cinematic love stories. Smash the like, and leave me a comment telling me your favorite moment. Was it the restaurant, the storm, the doorstep, or that very last line? I read every single one. Share this with someone who believes even the coldest heart can be reached by the right pair of hands. And I will see you in the next story. Until then, remember, sometimes the most powerful thing in the room is the person holding the ladle.